30-second board time. We're going to run down hot topics for the season in Monster Energy Supercross, starting with the most consistent character of all. The racers were up and down, but JT, the weather pretty much threw a curve every Thursday, Friday. Didn't always affect the racing on Saturday, but we were dodging it almost all year.
Well, I was certainly dodging it down on the floor. I know, Weed, you're up in the confines of that dry booth.
Yes.
In the palace that you're in. But it was rough, treacherous. Think about San Francisco that you see there with that amazing hole shot from Chase Sexton. But this was a year of weather. You know, we've been really fortunate over the past few years, and let's just hope this summer is much drier than the months of January and February were.
Yeah, and even the non-mud races still end up being more soft and rutted than it probably looked. If you ask the riders, they were kind of over the soft conditions eventually. Speaking of riders, JT, look at how many ended up winning 250 races.
Yeah, 10 winners.
And you have to wonder if that weather that we mentioned played a role in any of that. Nate Thrasher wasn't a factor at many of the races, but he did get that San Diego win. Maybe that was mud induced, but I love the parity here. I love when the gate drops, not knowing what's going to happen, and having all of these future stars grabbing a win just adds to the texture of this 250 class that does feature two different coasts.
And two different champions as well. So let's talk about our 250 champs here. It's swept by the Austria group with its KTM and Husqvarna. That also includes Gas. I don't think many people had even thought about that until Hampshire brought it up after Nashville. Yamaha and Star Racing have been so dominant. We had a renaissance for Pro Circuit. We know what Honda's done recently with the Lawrence brothers. A pretty big breakthrough for starters just for the brand.
Yeah, this was a huge thing for not only for Rockstar Husqvarna, but for RJ, everybody involved to get that done. Tom Vial wins for Red Bull KTM. A banner weekend for everybody associated with that KTM Austria group. So congratulations to them. Well, those are the champions, but thinking about the rider that got second in the 250 East Supercross Championship, Hayden Degan should be mentioned here because I believe he's in the process of breaking out. Now, sure, he didn't win this title, but you look at last summer, how great he was. He goes out and wins the inaugural 250 Super Motocross World Championship playoff, and this year he gets 3 wins. So there are always going to be detractors from Hayden Degan. That's just what happens when a rider is as polarizing as he is. But if you are Monster Yamaha Star Racing, you have to like this trajectory. He's improving in every single series that he participates in, and he's going to be one of the favorites for this Pro Motocross Championship we're about to enter.
We know how cutthroat it is over at Star. I'm sure they're not happy to have not won any of the 250 Supercross titles with either Degan or Thrasher or Jordan Smith, some of the rookies in there. But I agree. I don't think it was as bad a season as people think it was for Degan for 2 reasons. A, he was hurt to some degree coming into the season. He didn't tell us how badly. Now afterwards, a Yamaha press release, he said he only rode 4 or 5 days leading into the Supercross. So that's grading on a curve for sure. And second, I think he's under the shadow of how successful Jett Lawrence is now. Jett Lawrence with perfect seasons, 7 titles in a row. Jett's second Supercross season, he did not win the title. He got beat by Colt Nichols. So year 3 maybe might be it for Degan, or to your point, it might be coming up in just a couple of days. You want to talk a big move in the 450 class here?
Yeah, I think we have to circle back to Chase Sexton and the move he made exiting 2023. Everybody was after this rider. We've now learned that even Monster Yamaha Star Racing was in the mix to hire this guy. Well, Red Bull KTM landed him, stole the Monster Energy Supercross champion away from Honda HRC. And I think we're finally seeing the fruits of that labor just show up, right? He wins the finale in Salt Lake City, and that's probably the best he'd ridden. It was kind of improving. We saw him working to get through the bike. I still think he's working to get his confidence back from 2023, but these are signs of life that everybody wearing orange has to be happy with. And I think it propels him into a position to maybe challenge Jett Lawrence as we enter Hala in just a week's time.
Well, good for him and that team, because I don't feel like this is what it was advertised as. We had heard Sexton complaining. He had so many mistakes and crashes over the last couple of years. He was fast, but I think a lot of that was kind of being pointed to the Honda, and this was definitely not a see, now that I'm not on the Honda, look what I'm doing season. He might have his chance to eventually say that. He's definitely getting better, but I don't think he or the team were signing up for a entire Supercross season of learning. I think they wanted to win the title and more races. Now it's in the better late than never category. And maybe it's just in time for motocross or SMX. We'll have to see. But definitely worth talking about there. Also, we got to talk about Adam Cianciarulo because it's the last time we're ever going to talk to him. You and I mentioned it in our podcast. There's so much going on a championship weekend, multiple titles, so many things to hand out. It was awesome to see that enough time could be carved out for Adam to have his moment.
Yeah, this was great. And, I think there's two narratives here with Adam Cianciarulo. There's one that says, well, he underachieved what his potential was, where we could have seen him rise to. I subscribe to the other narrative where this is one of the most talented riders I've ever seen. He won 250 races. He was the 2019 250 national champion. He was really close to being the 2020 pro motocross champion. I think he had a fantastic career. I think it's one he will look back on in a few years and be extremely proud of. And yeah, not everyone is going to reach every goal that they've ever set out for, but as a rider who never came close to the accolades that Adam Cianciarulo accomplished, I say job well done, fantastic career. And off the bike, maybe more importantly, he always handled himself in a way that was professional, well respected. And I think in many years from now, he'll look back and be more proud of that even than all the winning he did on a motorcycle. And speaking of riders that could have walked away and thankfully are not, Eli Tomac made his return to Monster Energy Supercross this year. And listen, I was out in front of this thing. I really thought it was going to be tough for him to get back to where he was after that Achilles injury. And yes, I was drawing on my own experiences, but I've watched other riders at the very top of the sport. That is a really difficult place to live, to be the best rider in the world. And you take several months off of training, riding. Other riders get better. The Jett Lawrences, the Chase Sextons, they continue to improve while you're forced to sit on the couch. So for Eli Tomac, I thought he got better all the way through the season. Yes, it's unfortunate that he's going to miss more time now with this injury, but it's a work in progress. And hopefully he's healthy, comes back in pro motocross, races the SMX playoffs, and gets a complete off season to prepare for 2025. Then we're going to see what he's capable of. I don't believe that 8 weeks of training and preparing for Anaheim 1 was enough, and I think the results bore that out.
Yeah, I got that wrong. I believed in the Superman powers of Eli Tomac too much and thought he'll be back, he'll be ready. But, you could get maybe 99% ready. It wasn't that he was terrible, but yeah, that last percentage point, I guess the gift maybe is that it gave him this hunger to want to take an entire season and an entire offseason to come back again. And I don't think a lot of people had 2025 as an expectation for Eli. So maybe that's a great gift that we'll get at least another Supercross or maybe an entire season out of him. And these seasons are so long, you tend to forget how it starts and how it ends, right? So the beginning of the year, Aaron Plessinger might have been the story. I remember we were doing the big live NBC daytime show from Detroit, and we started the show with him. He was the points leader. He was the most popular rider in the sport. He didn't even make it to the end with an injury, but we can't forget how cool this moment was to have him on top for a bit, chasing the cowboy around.
Yeah, it was amazing. You see Will Christian just in the sidebar there. I was so jealous of the interview that Will got to do because this was an incredible moment for Aaron Plessinger to right the wrong that I guess he did to himself in Detroit in 2023. But I don't think there was anybody that could not be happy for Aaron Plessinger. His personality is infectious. He's always smiling. Even in his toughest moments, he finds a way to turn it into a positive. So for him to get a win, for him to have that red plate and then carry it through after Anaheim 2, that was one of the brightest spots of this season and truly a feel-good moment that everybody could get behind.
Not feeling good in the moment was Cooper Webb, had this thumb injury, wasn't able to take it to Jett Lawrence like he had planned, but you still have to tip the visor. Look, Plessinger was good early, Tomac had his moments, Sexton had his moments, Anderson, but this was the only guy that was keeping the heat on Jett all the way to the end, and all the way to the end meant podium at the last race of the year. He's got a thumb injury, folks. He has to go in for surgery. There were rumors in the pits, JT, that if Jett just took off of the start of the main, that Webb was going to say, forget this, I'm not going to win the title. Nope. He still went out and got a podium with 9 fingers.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think that this could have been Cooper Webb's best riding of his career, and it's in a year that he didn't win the championship. That's really hard to kind of square that thought, but I think it is true. I think if Jett Lawrence didn't exist, we're talking about Cooper Webb's third championship and the best form he's ever been on. So I always think you have to grade things like this on a curve. You have to really take a step back and find perspective in these things, because it would be very easy for Cooper Webb to be devastated about not winning this title and now having an injury. But I think I look at it the other way. I think about where he was last summer, where he was in September, and where he is now, the form he's found, the confidence he's found, the comfort level he is on with that Monster Star Racing Yamaha. He's a completely different rider, and I expect that same rider to show up when he comes back to the SMX playoffs, and more, maybe even more importantly, what he brings us the entirety of 2025. On the other side of the Cooper Webb coin, you have riders just breaking into this class, and you have Justin Cooper and Hunter Lawrence, who, listen, these two are almost mirror images of each other, very different personalities. You know, you look at how they've gotten to this point very differently, but man, there are a lot of parallels to be drawn here. They seem to be very equal on the racetrack. So I would ask you, Weech, who gets the edge here? Who was better between these two, and whose future is brighter, if there is a difference at all?
Yeah, it's so funny to hear this comparison, because they have been so close for so many years, indoors and out, 250, 450. But I think if you quiz the fans, Hunter Lawrence just seems to have so much more potential. And I think his ceiling this year might have been a little better. I just am always going to be in the Justin Cooper camp, because nobody else is. I feel like every time he has a good run, second at Salt Lake City, it's a surprise. It surprises people every time. And when he gets on the podium in 450 Pro Motocross, which he will, it'll surprise people again. So since no one else is chanting his name, I will just do that. Although I do feel that maybe Hunter has a little bit higher ceiling, but Justin Cooper's so consistent. And the reason we brought those two up separately is because in any normal year, they would have been considered great as rookies. It's just maybe the greatest rookie season ever has just been completed by Jett Lawrence. Jeremy McGrath, Ryan Dungey might have something to say about that, but there's not much more you can say beyond that. To be the best rider in the world in both disciplines in your first shot at them is some really, really rare air.
Yeah, and it's difficult to frame these things, and I think it gets a little dangerous to try to compare them to McGrath or Dungey, but hey, that's what we're here for. And to me, I compare this more to Jeremy McGrath than I do Ryan Dungey, and I'll tell you why. When McGrath came on the scene and broke out and won all those races in '93, I think everybody took a step back and said, oh man, we're on the edge of something here. Now, when Ryan Dungey did it in 2010, we were still talking about Ryan Villapoto, who got injured in the middle of that title fight. James Stewart was still a factor. Chad Reed was still ready to go on and win many more races in his career. It didn't feel the same. And that may not be fair to Ryan Dungey, but this, to me, this feels different. Jett Lawrence feels like he's on the edge of maybe going on a run. And that was a dangerous statement to make earlier in the season, because we had to kind of pull that back in a little bit. He was tied in the championship, and this is kind of an ebb and flow that we've gone with. But really, when I look at it big picture, it is very hard to imagine a world where Jett Lawrence does not win several championships from here. And I struggle to find someone who, in a heads-up scenario, is going to best Jett Lawrence. That is rare air, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's really going to come down to the general, for lack of a better term, gnarliness of the sport. He might be the only one that can beat himself as time goes on. We'll see if riders coming out of the 250s, or even Hunter and Justin Cooper, who we were talking about before, can eventually put some pressure on him. Okay, that's going to do it for this show, but we're headed right to Pro Motocross. On this show, next week, we will have a Motocross preview edition of SMX Insider. And if you want to watch the opener for Pro Motocross, that's May 25th, Saturday. 1 o'clock will kick off Race Day Live qualifying coverage, 1 o'clock East, and 4 o'clock Eastern, the gate will drop for the motos. This is the continuation of a 31-round championship, but when it's round one of a different discipline, there isn't an atmosphere, I feel, in racing quite like that great unknown when the gate's dropping for the first time.
Hi folks, Lee Diffie from NBC Sports here. If you truly enjoyed what you just watched, you can get more news, interviews, and highlights by subscribing to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube page. You can get it all, so go for it.